Thank you all for being here this morning. We're here today to discuss the broad bipartisan support for Israel that is being actively undermined now by President Biden and Senate Leader Schumer. But first, I want to address the breaking news from this morning. About an hour ago, we learned that President Biden has invoked executive privilege to prevent the American people from hearing the audio recordings of his testimony with Special Counsel Robert Hur. The American people will not be able to hear why prosecutors felt the President of the United States was, in Special Counsel Robert Hur's words, a, quote, elderly man with a poor memory and thus shouldn't be charged. Just think about that for a moment. President Biden is apparently afraid for the citizens of this country and everyone to hear those tapes. They obviously confirm what the special counsel has found and would likely cause, I suppose, in his estimation, such alarm with the American people that the president is using all of his power to suppress their release. And rather than defend our closest ally at war, President Biden is using his authority to defend himself politically. Now, on the issue of today, just as President Biden defies the will of Congress with his use of executive privilege, he is brazenly doing so by withholding congressionally mandated aid. Just last month, Senator Chuck Schumer declared from the Senate floor, this is his quote, "The House must rush to Israel's aid as quickly as humanly possible." Well, today, Senator Schumer has done an about-face. He's reversed course. Yet again, it is President Biden and Senator Schumer himself who are standing in the way of getting Israel the resources it desperately needs to defend itself. The House has tried multiple times to deliver this much-needed aid to Israel, and each and every time now, Biden and Schumer have opposed it. And now, just weeks after Congress passed the National Security Supplemental, which included $26 billion for Israel, the Biden administration is defying the will of Congress and withholding weapons shipments to Israel. We want the president to hear this loud and clear. He said just not long ago that we had to have ironclad support for Israel. Well, that's what he previously proclaimed, but his actions are doing exactly the opposite. This is a catastrophic decision with global implications. It is obviously being done as a political calculation, and we cannot let this stand. The House will be voting on legislation to compel the delivery of defense weapons to Israel as they fight to protect themselves from radical terrorists and defend their very existence as a nation. But Joe Biden is threatening to veto that legislation, and Chuck Schumer is suggesting now that he refuses to bring it to the Senate floor. On October 7th, Hamas, the radical terrorists, which are proxies for Iran, lit a fire in Israel, a proverbial fire that is still burning. And Biden and Schumer are telling Israel that they are only really allowed to put out part of that fire. That is just simply not going to work. Israel needs to finish the job, and America needs to help Israel extinguish the flame of terror that is wrought by Hamas. It wasn't that long ago when President Biden called for the elimination of Hamas, but he's not doing that anymore. And now it's clear that Biden and Schumer have turned their back on Israel. They are carrying water for Iran and its proxies. This is not complicated. It's actually very simple. This is a moment where we need, not just the American people, but the entire world need moral clarity. You are either with Israel or you are not. And if Schumer refuses to bring this up for a vote, he'll be telling the world that his party, the Democrats, are no longer willing to stand with our great ally. I don't think that is a palatable position to the American people. With that, I'll yield next to our Republican Majority Leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Later today, the House is going to be making a very historic and important vote, and that's whether or not we continue to stand with Israel, whether we're going to ensure that the Biden administration follows through on their promise to deliver the weapons that in many cases Israel already paid for. Just think about that. Many of the weapons that President Biden is holding back right now are weapons that Israel paid for months ago. In some cases, things that they paid for before Hamas actually invaded Israel. And right now, while they're at war, and whether President Biden completely understands the severity of this war or not, the people in Israel surely do. The duly elected leadership in Israel understand that they're in a war that they have to win. They have to eviscerate Hamas, which is a terrorist organization which is funded and supported by Iran. Now, while President Biden is impeding the ability for Israel to defend themselves, Iran's not holding back. You saw them fire over 300 drones and missiles into Israel. Hamas is not slowing down. Hamas, by the way, still has over 130 hostages, including American citizens. Where is President Biden caring about the lives of those American citizens that are being held hostage right now in tunnels under Gaza? And President Biden is supporting Hamas's position against Israel? This is disgusting. And Chuck Schumer is going to hold this bill up. I think the public pressure, when this bill passes with a bipartisan vote today through the House, the public pressure will grow so large that Chuck Schumer will have to take this bill up. And if this bill does pass the Senate, like some other bills that President Biden threatened to veto, that he ultimately signed, because the public finally had enough. This is one of those cases. Because this is a time for choosing, as the Speaker said. And the choice is very clear. Right now, there is a war going on between Israel and Hamas. And if you're not supporting Israel, you're supporting Hamas, a terrorist organization. And so when President Biden said he wants to hold back on those arms sales, he is holding back on Israel's ability to go and fight a war against Hamas. The only other person that really wants that is Hamas. Why would President Biden choose that side? Well, today on the House floor, every member of Congress is going to have the opportunity to make that choice. This House majority leadership on the Republican side has been crystal clear from the beginning. We support Israel in their right to self-defense. They are under attack from a terrorist organization, and they will defend themselves. They have a right to defend themselves, and they're going to have our support in that right to self-defense. We will have Israel's back, and we're going to see who else does when the vote happens later today. And then we send that bill over to Chuck Schumer, and he's going to have to make a decision. He can give a bunch of hot air and rhetoric today, but when that bill comes over to the Senate, there's going to be a lot of other people, I think, that are going to have a say in whether or not he sits on that bill and sides with Hamas or else supports Israel. With that, I want to bring up our whip, Mr. Tom Emmer.
1 month ago, on April 13th, Senator Schumer tweeted, quote, "We stand with Israel and its people, and the United States will do everything we can to support Israel's defense against Iran," close quote. The following day, he said, quote, "The U.S. commitment to Israel's security is ironclad," close quote. Flash forward to yesterday, when Senator Schumer said he will block our bill requiring President Biden to send military aid to Israel. Where is your support now, Senator? Was it always just lip service, or do I need to buy you a new dictionary? Because last I checked, purposely withholding resources from one of our most precious allies when they're fighting for their very existence is not an ironclad commitment to their defense. It's aiding and abetting barbaric terrorists whose sole mission is to wipe Israel off the face of the planet. Moral of the story, when Joe Biden and the Democrats tell you that they support Israel, do not believe them. Actions speak much louder than words, and their actions have shown that they would rather stand in solidarity with terrorists than support our strongest ally in the Middle East. Meanwhile, the world is watching. Iran and its proxies are taking note. But the American people and our allies can rest assured that House Republicans will not let up on our mission to ensure Israel has the resources it needs to end Hamas once and for all. And with that, I'll turn it over to our conference chair, Elise Stefanik.
Thank you, Whip Emmer. Just a brief comment on the breaking news this morning. We continue to see unprecedented and illegal lawfare against President Trump, whether it's the sham Alvin Bragg trial in New York City or the weaponized DOJ. Joe Biden disregarded over 250 years of constitutional executive privilege when he orchestrated an unprecedented raid on President Trump's home to obtain presidential records that President Trump was allowed to have under the Presidential Records Act. Now, Joe Biden is hiding behind executive privilege to prevent the American public from hearing how he knowingly mishandled classified intelligence for personal financial gain. On Israel, the lack of leadership we're seeing from the Democrat Party led by Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer is disgraceful. They have turned their backs on supporting our most precious ally, Israel, in a time of existential need, instead choosing to placate the far-left Democrat radicals who are now the anti-Semitic political base of their party. Schumer, time and time again, vehemently blocked our Israel aid package and publicly rebuked Prime Minister Netanyahu, the leader of an ally at war. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has done everything in his power to give Iran and its terrorist proxies the green light to escalate attacks, withholding critical aid, pressuring Israel to surrender, and continuing Biden's failed foreign policy of appeasement. At every opportunity, Joe Biden has failed to support Israel. Under Joe Biden, our adversaries no longer fear us, and our allies cannot rely on us. If Joe Biden wanted to ensure Israel could defend itself, he would. Yet he refuses. The American people will judge Joe Biden for this failure, and history will judge Joe Biden for this failure as well. House Republicans will not be deterred. We will put this legislation on the floor this week. We will put President Trump back in the White House, grow our majority, take the Senate, and together Republicans will always stand with Israel and its right to exist. And I'm proud to turn it back over to the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
We'll take a few questions if you have any. Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering, have you had any conversations with Leader McConnell regarding this bill? And if Senator Schumer refuses to bring it up, how can you further advance this act?
Clearly, Senate Republicans are in favor of this, and as we noted at the outset here, we do have broad bipartisan support, I believe, in the House. We'll affirm that again here shortly. But this should not be a partisan issue. It is shameful that it has become that. We have to stand with our closest ally, Israel. They are the only stable democracy in the Middle East. They are one of our closest friends, if not the most important ally that we have, for strategic reasons and for all the other reasons that all of us stand with Israel. That has always been our position. And this that you see happening right now is a brazen political decision by the President of the United States and by Leader Schumer, because they are clearly making this decision to appeal to a small subset, an element in their party that they're trying to appease. As Chair Stefanik said, you know, they've been appeasing Iran and they've been criticizing Israel. And now they're trying to appease a radical band of pro-Hamas supporters in their party. That's clearly what's happening here, and it is affecting the stability of the entire region, and it is a great concern to the entire world. And so that's why we're calling this out. We want everybody to see it for exactly what it is. There's nowhere to hide from this. As we noted, the President himself and Leader Schumer both, within just the last several weeks, were saying that we should stand with Israel. They were using the right language, and now they are doing it in a complete about-face. Why? Because they have new polling that suggests that they should. That is the only possible explanation for this, and it's unconscionable to us. Yes, ma'am.
That the full House will approve the contempt resolution to hold Garland in contempt, given the executive privilege letters today?
We'll see how that develops, one issue at a time. Yes, over here.
Some Democrats have said that this legislation is no longer necessary because President Biden is moving forward with a $1 billion arms deal for Israel. What's your response?
That's a pittance. That is a window dressing. That is to try to give him political cover. Those are things that were already determined a long time ago. We just passed the aid package just less than 3 weeks ago. And now they're defying the will of Congress. This was an overwhelming vote here on this floor, as you saw. The support for Israel. We separated each of those votes so that we could see exactly where everyone was. And that was a very clear message to the White House, to the Senate, and to the American people. And now the President of the United States is standing in the way of the will of the people. That was done here through their duly elected representatives. This is something that everybody should be calling out. Yes, ma'am. Last one.
You talked about bipartisan support in the House and Republican support in the Senate, but what about this bill will change the Democrat support in the Senate?
Well, we're going to find out. One of the reasons that we're calling this out is because we think the American people should be calling their senators over there, the Democrat senators, beginning with Leader Schumer, and letting him know what they feel about this. I think public opinion is on the side of Israel. We certainly know that with the rise of anti-Semitism that we're seeing in the country and the angry mobs on the college campuses and all of this other movement, as I said before, and I'll close with this again, this is a time for the President of the United States to stand out, look directly into the cameras, and call good, good, and evil, evil. We need clarity. We need conviction. We need consistency from the White House, and we're not getting it. And that is why all of these problems continue to be exacerbated. We're calling on the President to take that action. We're calling on Chuck Schumer to put this bill on the floor when we send it over there and let the Senate vote its will. With that, we thank you for being here.